Somewhere in the Arctic wilderness, there's a spot where you can lose 2 hours just by turning around. Not through some trick of travel, not through a flight or a time change you slept through. Just by standing in one exact place and turning your body a few degrees to the left. Face one direction and it's, say, 3 in the afternoon. Turn 90 degrees and it's 4. Turn again and it's 5 o'clock. In a different country, under a different flag. Because out here, there are no signs, no town, no road. Just a fence, a marker, and silence. 3 countries meet on this hill. On its own, that's not so rare. Borders cross all the time. What makes this spot different is that the 3 countries brought their clocks with them, and nobody agreed to sync them. So at a point of ground, you could cover with 2 footsteps. 3 nations are quietly living in 3 separate hours of the same day. How does a place like that exist? And is it even really true? Or is this one of those amazing fact claims that falls apart the moment someone checks it? To find out, we need to go to the far northeast of Norway. Norway is famous for its coastline, fjords, islands, endless jagged Atlantic edge. But look past the postcard scenery, up into the country's far northern tip, and the shape of Norway does something strange. It curls eastward, like a long finger reaching across the top of Scandinavia, tucking in above Finland and alongside Russia. That curl is the reason this story exists. Norway shares 2 borders up here, one with Finland, one with Russia. Where those meet, you get a tri-point, the exact spot where 3 nations touch. Norway actually has 2 of these. Further west, near Kilpisjärvi, Norway, Sweden, and Finland meet at a monument that gets tourists and hiking trails, practically famous as tri-points go. The one we want is quieter, colder, stranger. It's called Treriksrøysa, 3-country cairn, sitting on a low hill the Norwegians call Krokfjellet, and the Finns and Russians call Muotkavaara. Even the hill can't agree on its own name. This is where Norway, Finland, and Russia meet. And this is where the clocks stop behaving. Here's the part that sounds unbelievable the first time you hear it. This is the only place in all of Europe where 3 separate time zones converge at a single spot. Norway runs on Central European time. Finland sits an hour ahead, on Eastern European time. Russia, even out here thousands of kilometers from Moscow, keeps Moscow time, a full hour ahead of Finland, 2 ahead of Norway. Cross into Finland, your watch jumps forward an hour. Keep going into Russia, it jumps again. 2 hours of difference, packed into ground you could cross in under a minute. Before going further, is this actually true? Or one of those viral claims that falls apart under scrutiny? In this case, it holds up. Norway genuinely runs Central European time along its entire length, including this remote finger of land. Finland genuinely sits 1 zone ahead, and Russia genuinely keeps Moscow time here, rather than shifting to something more local, the way some far-flung Russian regions do. 3 real zones, 1 real point, no asterisk. So why would anyone design a border this way? The answer has almost nothing to do with time zones, and everything to do with something older: rivers, treaties, and the slow redrawing of empires. Sweden once controlled Finland. In the early 1800s, Sweden lost Finland to the Russian Empire, and a new border was carved between Swedish-Norwegian territory and Russia. Later, when Finland became independent and Norway settled its modern borders, those old imperial lines were simply inherited. Nobody planned for 3 time zones to intersect on one hillside. The border came from rivers and old agreements between kingdoms that no longer exist. The time zones arrived centuries later, laid on top of a boundary already fixed by history. The strangeness here wasn't designed. It's a coincidence. Politics from one era colliding with a timekeeping system invented in another. Time zones feel like they should follow geography, the actual position of the sun. They don't. They follow decisions, a capital city, a trade partner, a sense of national identity. Norway could use a time zone closer to its true longitude up here. It doesn't. Russia could shift this remote sliver to match its neighbors. It doesn't either. Both keep national time, all the way out to a rock most of their own citizens will never see. The land doesn't change, the mountains don't know what hour it is, but cross an invisible line and the number on your watch does. So what's it like to actually stand there? Getting to Treriksrøysa takes real effort. From the Norwegian side, hikers start near a spot called Grensefoss and walk for hours through forest and open wetland before the final climb. Most visitors make the entire trip without seeing another person. The site itself is almost anticlimactic. A modest marker, fences running off along the border lines, open ground. No gift shop, no sign explaining the time zones, just wind and 3 sets of border posts meeting at one point. But you can't wander freely in every direction. The Russian side is watched, fenced, and taken seriously. Stepping across it, even by accident while framing a photo, is not treated as a technicality. Visitors stay on the Norwegian side and cross into Finland with care. You can stand close enough to touch a nation's border post, while an actual guarded boundary separates you from it by less than the length of your own body. The pieces are all here now. A remote hillside, a border shaped by empires that no longer exist. 3 nations meeting at one marker, 3 real-time zones stacked on top of it. But underneath all of it is a simpler idea. The hill doesn't know it belongs to 3 countries. The rock hasn't split. The wind blowing across Krokfjellet doesn't slow down in Norway and speed up in Russia. Nature out here is completely indifferent to every line we've drawn across it. And yet we drew them anyway. First as borders, deciding who answers to which government, then as time zones, deciding whose clock a day should follow. 2 invisible systems, stacked on top of each other, both entirely human, both taken completely seriously by everyone who lives near them. The sun rises over the same tundra no matter which side of the fence it touches. It's only when a person stands there, watch in hand, that the strangeness becomes real. 3 countries, 3 hours, 1 patch of ground and a line so thin you could cover it with your boot. So here's a question for you. If you were standing on that hill with 3 countries and 3 hours touching at once, which time would you actually trust? Because honestly, out there, even your own phone wouldn't know what time it is. And speaking of things that don't know what they're doing, if you haven't hit subscribe yet, your feed clearly doesn't know what's good for it. Fix that. Smash like too, it costs nothing and it feeds the algorithm gremlin that decides if you see the next one.